Hello everybody, and welcome to day 15 of 28 days to master level chess tactics. So we're on the final day of demolition of pawn structure, and I'm going to give you an example position. This is white to move, and I want you to keep in mind that you can look for various forcing moves, or you can always just play a more solid option. Now, in this position and in this game, I chose it because actually it did contain a mistake in the Encyclopedia of Chess Combinations. It's always good to find mistakes. Now, I found this one, of course, with the help of a computer, but I chose this position and I looked at it and I said this would be a great example of demolition of pawn structure that you'd face in a real game. And as compared to day 14, where Gligoric had a clearly winning position, but actually in the real game, he got a draw. This is a position where the player, as white, basically decided to go for an attack, demolish the pawn structure, even though it wasn't completely sound. But nevertheless, it was still very hard for black to defend. So let's get into it. All right, in this position, obviously it screams out to just play knight takes f7. But obviously the reason it's a little hard to figure out from this position is because white isn't fully developed. He does have this two bishops, but this rook, and I would say even these two bishops are not very well developed, although the bishop's ready to come something like b3. Now white could just play something like bishop to f4, and he has a pretty big advantage already because of this knight, and black's quite cramped, and he could just resume development, just take some time. Personally, I would take some time to activate. But in this position, white went for knight takes f7. Now, what you would calculate is the obvious moves with the check, driving the king to f8, and it does create some cramped problems. Now, the natural follow-up would be bishop to b3, threatening a mate in one, and of course, black does have a defense because he is not completely undeveloped himself. Alright, so white just continues with his own attack, and now he plays rook to e3. Now if the knight takes, that opens up the diagonal and white gets a mate. Alright, so from this position, black just tried to consolidate with bishop to f6. And now here, white actually has a winning position, and it's really hard to find exactly what black should do, because white's going to play rook to h3, he can bring the bishop in, and it's very hard to defend. But black actually does defend pretty well. So white decides to get rid of that knight, pawn takes, and then he plays rook to h3. Now he's threatening check here, bring the rook over, and he would get a quick mate. So black tries to defend by putting his king in the corner. We see queen to f7. So in this position, it's still winning for white, although it's not so clear how to proceed. Now, the main idea is to get rid of this f6 bishop, so white develops all of his resources in trying to do that. Alright, the queen, he could play many moves. If he plays here, though, there's something like just rook to e1, and he could take the pawn or just bring it to e6 and then sack the bishop, which is the only thing covering the g7 square. And so that's exactly what we see. The rook comes in, and at this point, the queen has to give itself up for the rook, and it's quite surprising that even though white didn't necessarily have a completely crushing attack, he ended up in this overwhelming position. Now, I'm not going to go over all some computer lines, but there was some computer defense earlier. But, you know, of course, for a human, it's very hard to be in these kind of positions when you're just sacking a piece. You get very active pieces along the way. And I'm going to post in the description below this position, or at least the beginning position, if we go back. And you can just analyze the rest. I'm not going to go over every single line because it seems like players don't really want every single line in a video. It's kind of a little too much. I just want to cover the main ideas and purpose of demolition of a pawn structure. And now I know that a lot of exercises and videos, they'll give you kind of a very clear-cut example, but that's why I was trying to show in this course less clear-cut examples which you see in a lot of games, even below master level games, where you're not sure exactly what to do. You kind of see an idea that you've seen before, and this is a perfect example of demolition of a pawn structure that, despite some perfect computer defense that could have happened, practically it's very hard for your opponent to play. And I would say that don't shy away from those kind of combinations. Even if you find some little snag, just press ahead, and a lot of times you have a winning attack because it's just so irresistible in a way. All right, so basically the queen gives up. Otherwise, he's going to sack here on f6, and then he's going to get a quick mate either with bishop to g7 or queen to g7. I'll see you in day 16, and we're going to get into pinning and pins, higher level examples of that. So let's see how far we can take pins over the next 3 days. I'll see you in the future. Thanks for watching. Don't fret if you got the solution wrong. There will be another time.